Capitalism, as an economic system, has profoundly shaped the development and trajectory of Western societies. Its roots can be traced back to the late Middle Ages and the Renaissance period, when trade and commerce began to flourish, setting the stage for the emergence of a market-driven economy. The origins of capitalism in the West can be linked to the decline of feudalism and the rise of mercantilism between the 15th and 17th centuries. During this time, European nations such as England, France, and the Netherlands started to explore and establish colonies, creating vast networks for trade. The accumulation of wealth through trade and the establishment of joint stock companies, such as the British East India Company, marked a significant shift toward capitalist practices. The Industrial Revolution, which began in England in the late 18th century, was a pivotal moment in the history of capitalism. Technological advancements in machinery and manufacturing processes led to the mass production of goods, fostering economic growth and the expansion of markets. This period saw the rise of industrialists and entrepreneurs who capitalized on the new opportunities, leading to the development of modern capitalist economies. Prominent figures such as Adam Smith, whose seminal work, The Wealth of Nations, published 1776, laid the foundation for classical economics, played a crucial role in shaping capitalist thought. Smith's ideas on free markets, competition, and the invisible hand became cornerstones of capitalist theory and practice. The 19th century witnessed the consolidation of capitalist economies in the West. The expansion of railways, the growth of factories, and the rise of urban centers contributed to the economic transformation. This era also saw the emergence of financial institutions, stock markets, and banks that facilitated the flow of capital and investment. While capitalism spurred economic growth and innovation, it also brought about significant social changes. The rise of a factory-based economy led to the creation of a new working class, which often faced harsh working conditions and low wages. These challenges prompted the development of labor movements and the push for social reforms. The 20th century was marked by significant developments in capitalist economies, including the Great Depression, the post-World War II boom, and the rise of multinational corporations. The introduction of welfare programs and regulations aimed at mitigating the excesses of capitalism, such as antitrust laws and social security, reflected attempts to balance economic growth with social welfare. The latter half of the 20th century saw the acceleration of globalization, with Western capitalist economies expanding their reach across the globe. Advances in technology and communication facilitated international trade and investment, leading to the creation of a global economy. While globalization brought economic opportunities, it also raised concerns about economic inequality and the exploitation of labor in developing countries. In the 21st century, capitalism continues to evolve, influenced by technological advancements, digital economies, and the rise of new economic powers. The emergence of tech giants and the gig economy are reshaping traditional capitalist practices. However, challenges such as climate change, economic inequality, and financial crises pose significant questions about the future of capitalism. The impact of capitalism on Western societies remains a topic of intense debate. Proponents argue that capitalism drives innovation, economic growth, and individual freedom. Critics, however, highlight issues of inequality, environmental degradation, and social injustice. But one of the facets of capitalism is rarely equated with it nor given full recognition for its negative impact. This is inflation. Inflation is a complex economic phenomenon that refers to the general increase in prices of goods and services over time, resulting in a decrease in the purchasing power of money. To understand why inflation occurs, we must explore various factors and mechanisms that contribute to the rise in prices. Demand-pull inflation occurs when the demand for goods and services exceeds their supply. This scenario usually arises in periods of economic growth, where consumers have more disposable income and businesses experience higher demand for their products. As demand increases, businesses may raise prices to balance supply and demand or to capitalize on the heightened purchasing power. Key factors contributing to demand-pull inflation include Economic expansion and increased consumer spending, government spending and fiscal policies that boost demand, monetary policies that lower interest rates, encouraging borrowing and spending. Cost push inflation is driven by rising costs of production, such as wages, raw materials, and energy prices. When production costs increase, businesses often pass these costs on to consumers in the form of higher prices. Factors that contribute to cost push inflation include labor market conditions leading to higher wages, increased prices of raw materials due to shortages or geopolitical factors, rising energy costs affecting transportation and manufacturing. Built-in inflation, also known as wage price inflation, is related to the expectations of future inflation. When workers and businesses anticipate higher future prices, they adjust their wage demands and pricing strategies accordingly. This creates a cycle where wages and prices continually rise, contributing to ongoing inflation. Factors influencing built-in inflation include expectations of inflation among consumers and businesses, indexation of wages and contracts to inflation rates. Inflation can also be influenced by external factors that are beyond the control of domestic economic policies. These factors include global commodity price fluctuations, exchange rate movements affecting import prices, international trade policies and tariffs. Central banks play a crucial role in managing inflation through monetary policy. By controlling interest rates and regulating the money supply, central banks aim to maintain price stability and prevent excessive inflation. Key strategies employed by central banks include adjusting interest rates to influence borrowing and spending, implementing open market operations to control money supply, setting inflation targets to guide monetary policy decisions. In conclusion, we can say that inflation is produced by various factors, including demand-pull dynamics, cost-push pressures, built-in expectations, external influences, and central bank policies. While inflation can erode purchasing power, moderate inflation is often viewed as a sign of a healthy, growing economy, balancing the need for price stability with economic expansion. But is it? When someone innovates, what happens? Every innovation has marginal utility in that there is a level of production that makes sense. To put it another way, there is no scenario in which non-production is the best possible case. From a business perspective, production makes sense because it increases demand. The new innovation will attract more profit than the alternatives. This is how civilization develops. But what we are talking about is deflation. The innovation gives the consumer more for the same or less labor. But what capitalism has done is destroyed the direct connection between labor and the market. Capitalism corrupted the labor theory of value. The labor theory of value, originating from classical economics, particularly from the works of Adam Smith and David Ricardo, posits that the value of a good or service is determined by the amount of labor required to produce it. This theory suggests that the intrinsic value of an item is directly proportional to the quantity of labor invested in its production. Karl Marx further developed this theory, arguing that the labor expended in creating goods should be the measure of their economic value. He introduced the concept of surplus value, contending that the exploitation of labor is the source of profit in capitalist systems. According to Marx, capitalists pay workers less than the value of the goods they produce, thereby extracting surplus value and generating profit. In contemporary economics, however, the labor theory of value has been largely displaced by the subjective theory of value, which emphasizes individual preferences, and the utility derived from goods. This modern perspective asserts that value is not inherent in the labor itself but is influenced by the perceived benefit and desirability of the product to consumers. Despite its diminished role in modern economic thought, the labor theory of value remains a critical foundation for understanding economic systems and the dynamics of labor exploitation. It provides a framework for analyzing the relationship between labor, production, and profit, and underscores the socio-economic impact of capitalist practices on workers' lives. Capitalism, by severing the direct connection between labor and market value, challenges this traditional theory and raises questions about equity and justice in economic transactions. Pricing, under capitalist economics, is determined by the owner of the product or service. However, there are no moral limits on what price point will be used. It is assumed the company will charge whatever the market will bear, that is the maximum price that will generate the most revenue after costs. This tendency of the West to embrace capitalism is akin to the West embracing atheism, because capitalism is economic atheism. As atheism removes the moral limitations on sin, capitalism removes the limits on what a person can charge for his services or work. Under the influence of Christianity, there used to be the idea of a just price, the price at which a thing ought to be sold. Liberal economics along with liberal social theory eliminates all boundaries and allows us to each decide for ourselves what our boundaries and limitations are. Capitalism liberalized the market and created a financial version of the law of the jungle. In capitalism, financial might makes economic right. There are only two alternatives. One alternative is the law of the jungle. The winner of such conflicts gets to make the law and govern. In politics, the winner of such conflicts is called the leader. In capitalism, the winner of these economic conflicts becomes a monopoly. They set the rules for the market. The only other option is the church. The church is antithetical to the state, and so where the church predominates, there is a free market. The church is a flat organization based on moral principles, not on law. It does not operate on the basis of natural law or the law of the jungle. The opposite of liberalism and the rule of law is Christian theology. Liberal freedom is antithetical to the Bible. It does not translate into theology or spirituality. Christians cannot be effective nor saved and liberal. The Bible is a handbook on how to live as mature persons. Mankind cannot rely on his emotions or desires to guide him to maturity. We need an objective or impersonal source. This is why we were given Christ and why Christ gave us the church. The church is our guide because we cannot build it as children. The church is composed of spiritually mature persons and develops only as Christians develop spiritually. The development of the church and the development of free enterprise are two incompatible systems. Capitalism has largely been responsible for the degradation of the church. As capitalism progressed, the church grew less influential and people because less mature. Capitalism destroyed the West by destroying the faith that had built the West. For a period there appeared to be a synergy, but any sense that there was a symbiosis between capitalism and the church was misleading.